Ho'oponopono, which I'm wearing a shirt about this and I've written many books about this. So I guess we'll just rewind here a little bit and go back to the law of attraction. It's about learning how to consciously create your reality. And it is something every one of us needs to know, because every one of us, until a point of awakening, is just a victim. We're just reacting to life, and we don't know we have choice. We don't know that we're contributing to what we're creating and experiencing. And it feels like everybody else is to blame. They would all just change, we would be fine. And what the law of attraction is introducing is your own use of your mind power. Instead of using it in a negative way, which is what most of us do, again, unconsciously, we don't even think about it. We're just kind of gossiping and complaining and then creating more things to gossip about and complain about, not knowing we're instrumental in the creation process. So the law of attraction is awakening to how are you using your mind? That's the surface level. You got to go deeper than that, because it's not so much how you're using your mind, it's how your subconscious mind is already operating. And this is one of the things I think Napoleon Hill didn't know about this. He talked about change by influencing what already existed in the subconscious mind, but not changing the subconscious mind. And I also, as much as I love the movie The Secret, and I'm glad that it came out, I'm glad that I'm in it, it's superficial. It only talked about thinking it and visualizing it, and then you would get it. The doorbell will ring, and there's the love of your life, or there's the bike you've been wanting, or the cars, or there's a bundle of cash waiting for you. And typically, it doesn't work like that. Typically, you have to change the data, the programs, the beliefs, the paradigm that's in the subconscious. And that's where there's real work, and that's where you often need a coach, you need a mentor, you need somebody on the outside of your paradigm to kind of point out what you're thinking and what you're doing. And then another aspect that is way overlooked, and you highlighted it, is action. My God, I am an action-oriented guy. I have written 90 books. If you go all the way back in time to when I was homeless and had a $5 typewriter, had I just said, hey, I'm going to be a writer one day, but I never punched any keys, I wouldn't be here today. Not as an author, and I probably wouldn't be here at all. I had to take action. And so what I tell people is life is a co-creation. You have your part to do, and the universe, which you can call the divine or God or the cosmos or the field of all possibilities, it'll join. It will go ahead and act and contribute as well. But you have your part. You have something to do, and this is the action steps that have to happen. I'm a musician. I have 15 albums out. I'm in 30-some movies besides the famous one, The Secret. I have my own movie coming out, inspired by Sonia and so many other people here. And hundreds of products, coaching program, everything. None of that happens by sitting here, closing my eyes and visualizing it. Sitting here, closing my eyes and visualizing it is a step. But once it's ignited in me, that's when I open my eyes and get up and do something, which is the phone call, which is the writing, which is traveling, which is whatever it happens to be. And I want to point out to people that when you do take action on that level, it never feels like work. At that point, you're expressing your love, you're expressing your divinity, you're expressing your passion. So you are active. And when people look at me and they go, my God, you wrote 90 books, you must never sleep, you must never go out, you must never party, you must never. And it's like, it's easy for me because it's my life path. Whatever they're doing, I might find repulsive. It's like, I can't do that, but they can because it's their life path. So this is just kind of a brain dump to maybe catch us all up to speed and be on the same page.
No, it's perfect. And one of the things I want to ask your thoughts on, I always I feel like when it comes to say manifestation, there's no like, this is, you're doing it wrong probably, but it was interesting. John Gray changed my way of manifesting, meaning changed my way of speaking things into reality at one point, because the way he did it worked better for me than the way I was trying to do it. So I was trying to do it like, I am abundant, like I am, which I know works for a lot of people, but for me, it was like, I felt my unconscious didn't believe what I was trying to tell my conscious, if that makes sense. And so John Gray, I was sitting with him, this was a few years ago in San Francisco in the morning, and I'm interviewing him, and he said, I said, how did you get on the New York Times list? It was a very out there question, random. And he said, well, it took 8 years of every day manifesting. And I said, okay. And then we get talking about how he manifested. And what he did, which was different than what I'd seen before, is he said he talked as if his publisher was calling him and saying, Juan, great news, you're on the New York Times list. He talked as if couples were coming up and saying, you've saved our marriage. And it was so different to me than the idea of me saying I'm a New York Times bestseller. I felt that I could feel it more if I visualized somebody else saying it to me. So what I tried, Joe, is that later that day, I flew to San Diego to interview Lisa Nichols, and I was driving in the car to interview her, and I tried to talk out loud what I wanted the Lisa to say at the end of the interview. And it was like, Corey, such great questions. Thank you for your gift. Thank you for asking these unique questions. And now I have a video of Lisa saying almost verbatim of what they said in the car. And so I started trying to use that approach to manifesting versus saying I am. And I don't know that there's a wrong answer to that. But do you feel there's different ways we can try to manifest and try to visualize and that type of thing? Or is there, you feel, one way that works best?
There's certainly not one way and only one way. We live in this abundant universe, so there would most likely be an abundance of ways to manifest what you want in the universe. I've been cataloging these for so long. This is one reason I have audio programs and video programs and books. It's like I keep discovering different ways to create, and I'm offer them as a kind of a smorgasbord. So you walk up and go, well, I don't want to try that one. It doesn't feel right, but this one feels right. One of my favorite techniques is what I call Nevilleizing. And that's the word I coined after studying Neville Goddard. And I so love Neville Goddard that back in 2005, I republished his very first book. That was before the world really started to catch up to who he was. That was before The Secret came out. That was before Wayne Dyer and a bunch of people started talking about Neville Goddard, and people started being aware of Neville Goddard. So I've been with Neville for a very long time. And Neville's claim to fame and what he made different that actually ties into neuroscience, though he didn't know that back then and he didn't have that word back then. And it's the idea of imagining with feeling that what you want has already come to pass. You Nevilize it. You feel it real. I even recorded a song called Feel It Real with Grammy winner Ruthie Foster. And it's the whole idea that instead of sitting here and visualizing, oh, I'm going to be on the New York Times bestseller list one day, which works. That is a valid technique. Science backs up. Mental imagery will create your reality. And that is one way to begin the process. But what Neville found is that you can speed it up by pretending you already are on the New York Times bestseller list. And when I say it, you don't just say the words, because you could say, I am a New York Times bestseller, and then you have the problem you're talking about in the sense that most of you doesn't believe it. It's like, I am, no way, there's no evidence I am. You're saying, you're trying to speak it into existence. That too works. It does work. You can say that, and over time, you're re-imprinting the brain, subconscious mind, and it can manifest. But again, we're talking about acceleration. With Neville, he is imagining not only are you already on the New York Times bestseller list, and this is where the part ties into what you just said, you call all of your friends. In your mind, you're going, Corey, I got to tell you what just happened. I picked up the newspaper, and there at the top was Zero Limits Living, my latest book. It was on your, I didn't even try. There it was. And actually, as I'm, that didn't actually happen. I'm playing it out. And as I'm pretending I'm calling you, I'm getting rushes of energy. I mean, right now, physically, I got my bones are dancing in my body. Everything is kind of shaking and twinkling and dancing. I can't sit in my chair anymore. I got to go. And it's all because of this rush of energy that is hitting because I'm Nevilleizing it. So Neville would really be saying, go and live from the end result. And when I say live, this is an embodiment that it's already real. I'm a car guy. In fact, I'll just go ahead and say this. I have a Lamborghini being built for me right now in Italy. So that's the real part. What I would do to accelerate the manifestation and the receiving and everything of it is say, Corey, I went for a ride this morning in my Lamborghini. It was a screaming blast. And I might take some video footage and imagine that I posted it. And I posted it today, and I'm just, I'm orgasmically happy as I consider driving around in my Lamborghini. Now, as I'm telling you all this, I don't have the Lamborghini. I didn't drive the Lamborghini. I didn't call anybody about the Lamborghini. I didn't make any videos about the Lamborghini. I'm novelizing the experience. This makes it real for me, and it makes it real for the universe. Now, I mentioned neuroscience, so let me go ahead and just kind of segue into that. The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And we know that because you can go to sleep at night and have a nightmare, and you're scared hoopless. And you wake up in the morning and go, oh, that felt real. Your brain didn't know the difference. And your brain was really conjuring it up, and you didn't know the difference. So what we're doing in nebulizing is it's kind of a brain hack. We are imprinting that desire as if it is a full-blown real experience, and the brain accepts it as reality and then starts to move in the direction of manufacturing it. So when we talk about all these different manifestation techniques, and believe me, I don't know them all, but I know a lot of them, and I'm still learning, still experimenting. But currently my favorite would be nebulizing for a lot of the reasons you were just talking about. When you go to interview the wonderful Lisa Nichols there, and you are imagining that it's already taken place, or you're already visualizing, here's her answer, here's my question, you're making it real in you. This is a lot more powerful than an affirmation. You know, Napoleon Hill talked about affirmations and self-talk and all of that, which again, it works. It is powerful. But I find it's kind of like the slowpoke way to create the reality you want.
I love it. So I just have one more follow-up to that. And then if you're okay with it, Joe, because I've been seeing a few questions come in the chat. Are you okay if we take some questions from people as well?
Of course, of course.
Okay. John, to double check. Before I go there, though, you just made me think
this
of this
is
when you
a
were saying
sneaky peek
about
behind the experts bootcamp, so we won't be able to go into all the questions and answers because it's like a private meeting.
People seem to struggle with too.
But I just want to carry on showing you this last little bit on manifestation because it's
going
good.
Back to the point about with John Gray, he told me it was 8 years that he spent doing that before the book became. He wanted to have the best-selling relationship book of all time, and it ended up happening. And he said it took 8 years. And what's fascinating to me is I told people that, and some people like to compete with manifesting, and they're like, he was obviously doing it wrong if it took him 8 years. And I said, he had the biggest, in the relationship world, he had the biggest success ever, but you're saying that the timeline was wrong? And then it made me think of a client we worked with who wanted to land a TEDx, and she had this thing on her wall that said, her name is Tasia Valenza. She's an Emmy Award winner. And she said, Tasia Valenza is a TEDx speaker. And she put that up 7 years before her and I met. Never tried to land a TEDx. And then we met, and within about 2 months, we had her on the TEDx stage. And somebody said, well, you know, again, you did it wrong if it took 7 years. But does the universe have a timetable, Joe, is what I'm asking? Because it was the right time for her when it happened.
Yes, the universe has a timetable. And you also have limiting beliefs. And we have to find the balance between both of those. So when somebody says, here's what I want to achieve, and I think it's going to take 3 years, where is that coming from? Is that a limitation that is coming from their own mind? For me, my middle name is impatient, so I usually want things yesterday. If I say that I really want to manifest something, part of me is going, how come it didn't happen yesterday? The universe probably knew I wanted it yesterday, but it didn't give it to me yesterday. And I'm semi-kidding about this, but I do want the acceleration because, as I mentioned, my latest book is Zero Limits Living. My movie is called Zero Limits. I'm in this domain of finding out, do we have any limits? And if I say it takes 3 years, that I just put a limitation on my own goal. And I very well may have. So that's the first thing I have to look at is, am I projecting limitations by saying a certain time? Can it be done sooner? And I have a great story to talk about how I collapse time that I'll get to in a minute if I don't forget. And the second part of this is, yes, the universe has its own timeline. If I drop a mustard seed in your hand or an almond in your hand and say, turn it into a tree, you're not going to do it instantly. You're going to have to go through the steps. You're going to have to take the seed and walk out to the garden and put it in the ground. And then you're going to have to water it, make sure there's sun, make sure there's weeds being pulled away from it. And you'll probably have to check on it every now and then. You will get the tree, but not today. And so the universe has a timeline, but you also have time limits based on your limitations and your beliefs. So I think it's the combination of both. So let me tell you the quick story. When I was deciding that I wanted to be a musician. And that was at this point, 12 years ago. I'm in my 70s now. When I was turning 60, I said, what's on my bucket list? Musician was there. So long story short, I signed up for a year-long program. A year-long program was going to give me coaching and mentoring and training on how to be a musician, how to go in the studio, write the songs and everything. At the end of that year, I would have an album. So a 12-year program, all right? I started. Within a month of starting it, a magazine comes to me and says, hey, we want to put you on the cover of the magazine. And I said, for what? And I said, yeah, anything you want. Anything I want? I get a blank check for a magazine cover? Wow. And then it occurred to me, I wonder if I can announce I'm a musician. Whoa, that would be cool. So I go to the producer and I said, hey, you know that 1-year program? Can we do it in a month? And I saw his eyes roll back. I saw his mouth drop a little bit. He says, no, this is designed for, and I said, just sit with it. We ended up saying we can do it in 2.5 months. And we did. And I ended up on the cover of the magazine, holding my CD, which I released. The 1-year program, which everybody believed, because of our unquestioned limitations, was needed to make that first album, was reduced all the way to, I think it was 2.5 months. Cover, finished album, holding the CD, telling the world. So a lot of what we say are timelines are our limitations. And we have to balance it with, the universe does have its own timeline. Are you trying to grow an acorn? Might take a while.
I love that. And as a musician, I can say, 2.5 months, that's impressive. I want to say too, and then we'll open up for questions for the last, I think, 30 minutes that we have you, Joe. Well, two things. One, when you're mentioning about the visuals, I would recommend people check out, because you're talking about being able to visualize what's happening as well. One of the things I love is mind movies. Yes. I know that's a friend of yours, Natalie. So check out My Movies, everybody. Really powerful way to visualize with actual videos. The other thing, when you mentioned Neville, I got introduced to Neville a few years ago, and I have to say, At Your Command was, for me, a game changer. So you could start probably anywhere with Neville. You probably have a very perfect place to start, but At Your Command was the book that was introduced to me by a friend of Demo Casanova. I don't know if you know Demo or not, but he's done a lot of work with Jack and John DeMartini and stuff. Anyway, he said, have you ever heard of Neville? And he just called him Neville. Like, he didn't say the last name. And I was like, no. And he introduced me, and I was like, oh. So anyway, when it comes to
that was the first book, At Your Command, and that was the book I republished in 2005.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I want to say one more thing. I have a collection of Neville books. Most of them are signed, and he likes signing it with this phrase, and I think it's relevant to share to everybody. Then we can go to your questions. And he wrote, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. What does that mean? Assume your intention has been manifested. Assume your goal is already realized. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you're already at the end. And I'm sure you would understand this. Your doubts when you state a goal aren't there if you're already coming from the end result of the goal. So if I sit here and say, I'm going to be a musician, well, it's all, how am I going to do that? When can I do that? What do I need to do that? But if I Neville'ize it and I am imagining I got my Lamborghini and I'm driving it around, there's no doubts. They've been wiped out by the reality of the experience that I'm having as I Neville'ize it.
Wow, I love it. And so somebody asked, I've seen it a few times asked, and I saw people put in the comment what Neville's last name is. You actually pronounce it different than I thought it was pronounced. So now I'm learning the proper pronunciation. I've always said Goddard, which is obviously
Neville Goddard, Goddard. I don't actually know. Everybody calls him Neville, and we refer to him as Neville. So
I never knew his last name. I brought the book and I forgot to look at his last. Like, I didn't notice his last name.
Right.
So I was just like,
well, most of the books they just say Neville on the cover. At Your Command, Neville.
Yeah, it's like Prince or Madonna or Neville. Awesome. Okay, very cool. So it's kind of appropriate that nobody knows for sure what his last name is even in here. Awesome. So let's some people come in and ask some questions. And to respect Joe's time, I'll just say wherever we get